right. Good morning and welcome. Yes, we're ready to start. Hey, thank you so much for joining us to this webinar it's presented by the Iowa Cargo Committee. It's the International Aviation Women's Association Cargo Committee. We're going to talk about how a technical experience, if you have an airframe and power plant license, how that can help you with a staff career. And we'll talk a little bit more about what that means as we go through. My name is Selenita Jimenez Williamson. I am the chair of the Iowa Cargo Committee. I also work at FedEx. I'm a senior manager of quality assurance, but as we go through the webinar, I'll speak a little bit more about my aviation career. So moving on, before we get started, I would like to ask everyone to please mute your mics and then also turn off your video. And if you have any questions, please submit them in the chat area and the speakers will answer them as we go through the meeting. We're also going to have a 15-minute question and answer at the end. So thank you so much for your understanding. Connecting with Iowa has gotten much easier now because we have an app. So if you want to stay in the know and in the go, you can download this app here by using this QR code. But then also you can find information at iowa.org. Thank you to the Iowa members who have joined us today. But also I wanted to say, for those of you who are not Iowa members, if you want to learn more about membership, you can find information at iowa.org. And I can tell you, I've been a member since 2018, so that's 6 years now. And it's been a wonderful way to connect with women that are leaders in the aviation industry and can be mentors, can be friends, benchmarking opportunities, etc. It's just been great all around from my personal experience. Thanks so much. So finally, I would like to say thank you to the Iowa allies for their continued support of Iowa. Their support ensures continuity of our mission in supporting women in aviation and aerospace, and their contribution fund networking platforms, including regional receptions and connects, and help create future aviation and aerospace leaders through Iowa scholarships and internships. So with that, I am going to introduce our speakers. We'll start out with Dr. Ann Clark. She currently works at Georgia Tech, and she is the chief of the Air National Guard's Programs Division in the Electronic Systems Laboratory at Georgia Tech Research Institute. Before that, she was in the Air Force for 26 years and primarily worked in defense technology and academic environments. I'll let her speak a little bit more about her career here in a minute. Next, welcome, Ann. It's great to see you here. And by the way, I just want to let everyone know that everyone attending this webinar, the panel members, I consider them friends, and this is another way how we reach our industry via doing things like this. Next, I would like to introduce Lorraine DeMarco. A lot of us know her as Lori. She is currently the Vice President of Maintenance and Engineering at Mesa Airlines. And I have to say, I've known Lori since I was 14 years old. She was my A&P instructor. I think it was the hydraulics shop. But Lori comes with a diverse experience in aviation. She has been the director of maintenance at more than one airline, specifically FedEx, JetBlue, North American Airlines, and Shuttle America. She also has an airframe and powerplant license, and she was the first female to attend aviation high school. And by the way, I also attended aviation high school where I got my airframe and powerplant license. So thank you, Lori. And then finally, our third panel member is Stacy Rutzer. She is the president of the Association for Women in Aviation Maintenance. She is a board member of the National Aeronautic Association and has served in the FAA's Women in Aviation Advisory Board. And if you have a chance to read that report, it's wonderful, especially because a lot of those recommendations have been put into the FAA reauthorization bill. Stacy also holds an A&P license, and she has experience in both airlines and the maintenance, repair, overhaul facilities. So with that, I'd like to get started, and I'm going to start out by asking. So the whole, like I said, the point of this webinar is to talk about careers that you can have with technical background, and you'll see why I've invited Anne, because she's got she's at Georgia Tech, but a lot of us sometimes don't think that we can do technical type jobs at universities, but we have a surprise for you. We can. So I'll start out by asking Lori a question. So why did you want to become an aircraft maintenance technician?
Well, I don't think I ever sat down and said, oh, gee, when I grow up, I want to be a aircraft mechanic. I think it's just the way my life went. So I'm an A&P 45 years now. And so I got my A&P back in the 70s. And frankly, it's just because I'm the youngest of 6 kids. My brothers watched me while my parents worked, and my brothers were working on their cars. So when I was in kindergarten, they were handing me tools and saying, this is, hand me a screwdriver, hand me this. So I learned tools. And then in first grade, they pushed me under the car and said, you're smaller than me, get under there and do this. And so I started working on cars when I was like in first grade. And then one of my brothers joined Civil Air Patrol, and he started to learn how to fly. So I was around airplanes. And then I was in Civil Air Patrol. Then everybody in Civil Air Patrol was going to aviation high school. I didn't realize that it was an all-boys school at the time. And so it's just kind of way my life went. And 3 days after I graduated from aviation high school, I had a job at Pan Am. So it's just kind of the way my life went. And I'm happy about it.
Yeah. Oh, excellent. Excellent. Um, and I just thought of this when you mentioned this, but would you recommend a maintenance technician career for young women and young men?
I think so. I'm a girl that grew up in the projects. I'm first generation American. My parents came here without family. And so, like I said, there was 6 of us. My parents worked. I grew up in the projects, and so I'm not in the projects anymore. So yes, I absolutely would say that this has been a great career for me and for everybody that I know. I mean, I know a lot of women that are AMPs and men that are AMPs, and I love it, and everybody I know likes it. So yes, I certainly would.
Yeah. Yeah, and I can agree with that, and I would recommend it as well because I'm not originally from this country. I was born in Ecuador, and I came to this country when I was 13. So I went to aviation high school when I was 14. So here I am now, and a lot of everything that I have now as far as a career, and even I even met my husband working here at FedEx in aviation. So definitely recommend it because it's a very enjoyable field. All right, so Stacy, can you tell us if there is like what was the hardest part of becoming an aircraft maintenance technician, and maybe also talk about some of the pros and cons or some of the things that could be difficult about being an aircraft maintenance technician?
Yeah, so, a lot of people get really, really afraid of the FAA testing process. In fact, a lot of students that go through A&P school end up not getting their license just because they're worried so much about testing. I didn't have that experience. I found the testing to be, it was definitely intense, but it wasn't insurmountable in any way. And I would hope that the people out there could just, feel reassured that it's not as bad as everybody thinks it is. My biggest challenge getting into aviation maintenance was honestly my very first job. My first job was in commercial aviation maintenance. And the school I went to, you just aren't exposed to a lot of the facets about commercial aviation maintenance. I didn't know about 100% buybacks or RIIs or even just how to read and understand a Boeing manual after having been on Cessnas for 2 years. So I would say that was the most challenging part for me, was transitioning out of school and into the actual workforce. Um, as far as pros and cons, I feel like we could kind of talk about that all day. It does take a certain amount of grit and tenacity to be an AMT. Just because, shift work is hard. It's hot, it's cold, it's midnight. it's 2 a.m. and you're freezing. And so there are definitely a lot of, environmental challenges, and there's a lot of work-life challenges with being an AMP, but I don't think any of that compares to the amount of satisfaction of a job well done. When you finish a check on an aircraft and test fly it and bless it and it flies away, or even if you're on the line with an airplane full of passengers that are trying to get to their destination and are frankly mortified that maintenance is on board, getting a chance to resolve whatever that problem is, even if it's as simple as an MEL where we lick it, stick it, and kick it and get people on their way. I don't think any of the cons of the lifestyle of an aircraft mechanic can compare to the amount of pride and satisfaction that comes when you release an aircraft out of maintenance.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. I think when I first started being a mechanic, besides all the things that you mentioned, one of the things that was hard for me was being afraid of heights, but eventually you get used to that. My first job that I had right out of high school, I think I went up to, it was a passenger airline, which is now defunct, but they had a lab write-up, and I went up there and I fixed the lab. And then when I came out, I gave the captain like a thumbs up, and the entire cabin started clapping. So I know exactly what you mean about that, like that, having that satisfaction. And what I've told my kids a lot of times is like when I see an airplane up in the sky, and I know it's specifically a FedEx airplane, I can say with pride, hey, I fixed that, that airplane's flying because I had something to do sometime during the launch related to that airplane. So thank you so much for that. That's wonderful. So Anne, Dr. Clark.
Anne's fine. Let's
Yeah.
not hold the doctor out. We don't need her today.
Hey, listen. Hey, we have a lot of admiration for you. Thank you so much. So tell us about being a commander of the Air Force Research Lab's rocket lab at Edwards Air Force Base. And what did that entail? Because, different from us that have been technicians, you are part of this research lab. And here, when I see the word rocket, I'm like, holy cow.
Crazy, isn't it? You're thinking SpaceX, you're thinking all of this advanced technology, you're expecting it to be people in lab coats. We had those folks. But honestly, the fun part about being the site director, because I actually was in charge, I ruled 65 square miles of Mojave Desert out in the back of Edwards. And so Edwards Air Force Base, I'm hopeful that the people online actually have watched the right stuff. If you're airplane people, you have to have watched the right stuff, right? So that's where Edwards is. It's where they do all their test flights, they crash things. And yet, on the other side of the Salt Lake bed, so the Salt Lake bed is where the shuttle landed. They have placed this testing site where they have these huge stainless steel test rigs that they hang rocket engines on. And we're talking Saturn engines, the big Hummers, and they exhaust them down the cliff. And we were put out as far away from the base as possible because rocket engineers blow things up. I mean, it's part of the fun is rocket engineers are explosive folks that like it to go in one direction, that they think it's a waste if it goes out that way. So when I got out there, what I discovered was I was in charge of munitions troops. We were convoying rocket fuel back and forth from main base, and we were treating it as if I was moving C4 explosives. We had to do all of the security, we had to do all of the safety checks. I was in charge of explosive site plans because we had to rate all our buildings for things to go boom. It's just a constant part of being in rocket testing. Because I'll be honest with you, I mean, even now, shoot, we've been doing rockets for 50, 60 years. When we get them big, we don't really know if they're going to work. There are some instabilities that we just don't understand. And if they decide to shake themselves apart and go boom, we kind of have to figure that out when we actually light off the engine. And so when I was up there, the people that I was in charge of were safety folks, maintenance technicians that loved and just took care of those rigs. They knew how to do all the instrumentation. So think avionics, think all of the sensor work that you have to do to be able to capture. You can spend 6 months preparing for a 20-second test, and you got to get it right. And so you don't trust scientists to do that kind of work. You trust technicians who actually sign off on their work and they know what the hell they're doing, and they're going to double and triple check it all the way through and put their signature on the line. I was working with bioenvironmental folks. And so a lot of those support roles that are exactly the ethos that you ladies are talking about were what I was there to provide. I was there to keep the scientists alive and keep the mission on track. It was a really fun assignment.
Excellent. Thank you. And that's really good to hear, because besides technicians, I know that we've got some engineering prospects attending the webinar today. So and with engineering, mechanics, we all work together, but then to hear that aspect of it, it's really interesting and something to look forward to for anyone that's interested in aviation or just starting out in aviation. So excellent. Thank you so much. And this question is open to all three of you. So it's did your family help and support your career choice?
I couldn't have done it without my family. I mean, when I started in the 70s, I never saw another woman. So in fact, you're the first woman I ever worked with 12 years later. So I would say that without the support of my family, I never would have been able to do it. I mean, my dad was my champion. And then later on, as when I got married, my husband was my champion, who was my lead mechanic. As we all said, we met our husbands at work. And so I would say that I couldn't have done it without the support of my family, because, back in the 70s, people were evil and there was evil things that happened. And I just couldn't have lasted if I didn't have somebody that loved me, that hugged me and said, it's going to be okay.
Yeah, a lot of difference from the 70s to 2024, huh? Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes, yeah.
Anyone else?
It's funny, my dad told me that when I went to the Air Force Academy, I was taking a slot away from a young man who could fly fighters. And I can still remember this to the day. I was not happy. And my mom grabbed me and just dragged me into the kitchen and said, you are going to go do what you want to do. Don't listen to him. He's just old fashioned. You go and go after your dreams. But I'll tell you, it didn't take a year. First time he showed up at the academy and really saw what I was doing, that was just the past coming out of his mouth. He supported me for the rest of my career. And I always had this Air Force fighter pilot to call and say, hey, Dad, what am I supposed to do here? I'm not getting this. I'm not a pilot. Can you explain why they're doing it this way? Because pilots they're different. I mean, you work with them all the time. They are a different type of person, and having to work with them kind of you have to get used to their things. So yeah, I'll tell you, family is just huge. And it's not just the people who are genetically related to you. It's the family you build that you choose as you move through life too. And so building a network of friends that you can call on and just drop in anytime is hugely important as you move forward.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Thanks for sharing, both of you. Stacy, anything?
Yeah, I mean, a lot like Lori, my dad was super excited. My dad was an engineer. So I think he was a little surprised that I was the kid that decided to work with my hands, but he was very supportive. He toured the school with me, and my mom, she was baffled, but she was like, Stacy's got to do something with her life. I took a couple of years off high school without a lot of direction. So I think my mom was just excited that I was on some sort of path to a career. And you know, much like Celia and Lori, I also met my husband at work, and we're both in management now, so it's a little bit easier. But there were years where we were both working as technicians and both working shift work. And once we had kids, you know, it would have been impossible without, you know, the fact that my mother lives up the street. My mother moved up the street to help get us through that. And you know, in my role now, there's a ton of travel, and you know, it would be impossible without my family's support and the support I still get from them. So I'm really grateful that I have such a strong support network. And just like you said, it's the family that you find along the way too. You know, we had a sitter who would get up at 5 o'clock in the morning because we had to be at work at 6 a.m. So she would get up at before the crack of dawn to take our kids to so we could pursue our careers and chase our dreams. And you know, it's just I can't explain the value of it. It's incredibly important.
Yeah, yeah, that's excellent. Thank you for sharing that. I remember like when I had a shift that started at 5 a.m., dropping my kids off at the sitter at like 3:30 in the morning, and being thankful that she was willing to do that. Think, yeah, for me, my mom, I don't really think that she understood what my career choice was or what aviation high school was until I actually started working as a mechanic. But the support that she gave me was that she trusted, or at least acted like she wasn't nervous about me riding the subway for 45 minutes to get from where we lived in Queens to Long Island City, where aviation high school was. Um, and I don't really think she even knew that it was an all-boys school. She just knew it was something that I wanted to do. She supported it, and we came up with a plan that I would ride halfway with her as she was riding to her job. And then she would make sure that I would get on the number 7 train. So that's how my mom supported me. But now, of course, you know, like some of the things you mentioned, walked me down memory lane about her coming to help us here where we live in Memphis when we had situation with our kids. So that's wonderful, wonderful stories that you all shared. Thank you so much. All right, so the next question is for Lori. Talk to us about the first promotion you had after being an AMT.
Well, I was at FedEx at the time, and I was a mechanic, and the manager, I was promoted to be the manager of the station in Atlanta, and the manager was let go for sexual harassment, quite frankly. And I don't know if you ever knew that, but he was let go for sexual harassment, and I didn't know that at the time. And the opening came, and I just thought, well, I'm going to go for it. But I have to tell you, there was like so many people were shocked that I did that I went to become a manager, and nobody thought I would get it. That was another thing, is everybody was like, well, you know, there was a guy who had been with the company a long time and was well liked, and they thought he was going to get it, and he kind of came and looked at houses and everything. So I think the message there is, for me, I didn't care if they said somebody else was going to get the job. I wanted the job, and I was going to throw my hat in the ring and do my best, you know, to go and get it. So I think everybody was surprised when I actually got the job. But it didn't stop me. I mean, you know, there wasn't any other women doing that at FedEx at the time, but that didn't stop me. I guess I've always just decided to go by my own instincts and my own path, and I don't let people dissuade me. So that was my first job, and I was the manager in Atlanta during the Olympics in Atlanta.
Oh, wow. Okay. Excellent. Yeah, I think in which, speaking about what we're talking about, staff careers, but leadership is definitely a career path for anyone that has technical experience, because you know, people need to be managed. People you know, love having leaders that motivate them, mentor them, etc. So that's a good career to follow, as far as something else to do besides working on airplanes.
I think the thing is, every time you do something different or get promoted, you acquire new skills. So like when you're a mechanic and you figured that out and you can fix the airplanes, and then you decide to do something else. And for me, it was management. I had to learn management of people, because it's not just the airplanes anymore. then you're managing personalities, and then you're managing problems that they have. Or, I had one of the guys in Atlanta, this is a true story. He bid in from Chicago, and I interviewed him over the phone, and obviously, he knew I was a woman. And he was in Atlanta like 2 weeks, and he came in my office and closed the door, and he said, "Can I tell you something?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "I just want you to know that I don't think that a woman should be a manager. I don't think that a woman should be a mechanic." And I looked at him and I go, "Well, you knew I was a woman when you bid in." And he goes, "Yeah." He said, "I knew." He said, "But I just want you to know that a woman's place is in the home." And he literally said that to me. And I said to him, "Well, I said, does that work for you and your wife?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "Good. Keep that stuff at home." And and that's what I told him. And he was fine. So, I mean, that's happened to me several times in my career about, like when Ann said about you taking the job away from a man. I wish I had a nickel for every time I was told that. It didn't stop me, but I wish I had a nickel for every time I was told that, or was paid less than men of equal positions, you know? But I think the thing about moving around or getting promoted is you have to be willing to acquire new skill sets.
Yes, definitely, definitely. And so, and I know this is not, anyway, I wanted to ask you, since from the military side,
Sure.
tell us a little bit about your career progression from when you first joined, and then what was your first promotion or next thing that you did?
Right. Well, the military has a pretty defined promotion path, right? In fact, if you don't get promoted on the officer side, if you're an officer and you don't get promoted, they let you go. So it's kind of an up and out. And even as a full colonel, I retired in my 40s and needed to come up with a second career, which is why I'm at Georgia Tech. So it's a really interesting system where, frankly, that they use you hard, and then they give you a pension and they push you out. So for me, my path was a little bit different in that I was an engineer. I'm an electrical engineer. I'm pretty hardcore on that front. At least I was. And I went to the F-22 program office. And so I was there when they were trying to get the premier air superiority fighter off of the ground. My cat's being a pest, but that's okay. Back in the 90s. And I mean, it still is the premier fighter in the world. We're building F-35s and a lot more of them, but they only have one engine. And anyone knows that two engines and a really big radar makes a better fighter airplane. But I was doing that, and frankly, it just wasn't satisfying me. And so from there, I went back to the Air Force Academy to teach. And that's when I discovered that really what I like doing is building people.
Mm.
I can build technical things. I'm pretty good at it. But the thing that satisfies me, my vocation, is building young engineers and helping them figure out what their paths are. And so I was an instructor for many years. That's why I have a PhD, is so that I could teach. It's a requirement for college. It isn't that I needed the to go spend extra time in school, except I had to get that grounding in the research side to be able to do that. But honestly, that changed my career. So I went from building pieces of metal to that slower, much more satisfying process. And so I now have a network of my kids that call me every few years when they're coming up on a fork in the road. I get these calls and we do these sessions where it's I don't tell people what to do, but what I do love is when I can help them really say out loud what their choices are and help them come up with a good way to make that choice. Not the answer, but that there are many options and what is the one that's going to be the best for everybody.
Yeah,
But yeah, I went through the progression and retired just before general officer. The generals all have to play politics, and I'm not a political animal, so.
yeah. I like how you put it, building people, because that's for me, it's one of the most rewarding things of my
It
career.
is.
And speaking about just not even speaking the language and coming to this country and then just sharing that story, specifically with other Latino women and young boys that, you know, you can come to this country, not speak the language, and end up with, you know, end up fixing jets, which is pretty cool to begin with, but then also have a career in management or in engineering. I mean, all kinds of, which we'll talk about later, what some of those things are. But certainly I know that the three of you agreed to participate in this panel because that is a big part of what you do, besides the careers that you have right now, is that specific thing of mentoring and just helping out anyone that wants to listen.
Anyone, seriously, this is one of the, if anybody on the line wants to reach out, I'm happy to get on the line with you. I enjoy it. It isn't just a service. It's actually something that I enjoy doing.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because I was actually going to say, so you'll probably end up with some new mentees out of this.
It's okay. It's
this
all
webinar.
good.
Excellent. Very good. Okay, so the next question is for Stacy, and can you tell us if a college education is a requirement for staff careers that support the operation of an airline?
I am so torn on this question. You know, when you sent it to me ahead of time, I was like, man, it's very much yes and no. So I don't have a college degree. It's just not something that ever has yet panned out for me. I'd love to get one day. And I've been able to move around and have a lot of success. You know, I followed the kind of traditional lead supervisor manager career route. A lot of AMPs get a degree in aviation maintenance management, which is a great degree to have. And, you know, I have a little bit of luck in that I kind of have some instinct towards people and I enjoy people and they make sense to me. And I had a lot of leadership training through Air Force Junior ROTC, actually all the way back in high school. And a lot of that has stayed with me through all of my career. I will say moving from frontline operations and frontline management into the more corporate role that I have now, I've encountered some challenges with things like, I don't know how to work Excel very well. My PowerPoint skills are not anything to be impressed by. And so I struggle with some of the most basic functions of a more corporate job because I don't have that more formalized education background. Now, the great thing about education is that you don't have to be enrolled in a school to continue your education. You know, even something as simple as Khan Academy and YouTube, there's so much that you can go out and learn. If you're motivated to learn something and there's a topic that, you know, you're struggling with or you want to figure out, the resources are boundless. And frankly, a lot of them are free. So have there been times in my career where I wish I could put, you know, a bachelor's degree with my name on it on my resume? Absolutely. But for so many careers, especially in aviation maintenance and aviation support roles, there's a really key indicator in that job listing that says, you know, bachelor's degree or equivalent experience. And that experience I found to be more valuable than that college degree. And it just means I have to catch up on some other skills and other ways. And I'm okay with that because I want to be a lifelong learner. It's something that I'm really passionate about. And I'm excited to learn new things each day, even though I'm not hands-on on the aircraft anymore.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, I mean, I was a mechanic for 19 years, and I would say I was more of a late bloomer as far as going back to college, and mainly because it just it was whatever, it was the right thing for me to do at that moment in my life. So when I was a mechanic, I was raising my kids, and you know, for a long time before what we have now, the accessibility of online education, whether it's like you said, formal or informal, it wasn't there when I was first starting out in aviation. So it's a wonderful world that we live in now with all the technology. So thank you so much, Stacey. All right, so Anne, tell us a little bit more about what you do at Georgia Tech and what type of careers can someone with either aircraft maintenance or some kind of technical background can do or look for at a research facility?
Sure. So I'm the division chief for a group of folks that work directly for the Air National Guard. And our group has been doing this for about 25 years. And so we actually the Air National Guard has fighters, but they tend to be the older ones. The active duty keep the nice, shiny new ones, and then they give the older airplanes to the Guard. And honestly, any technician knows sometimes the older airplanes fly better than the new ones. We're really struggling with the new ones to get them off the ground. But at the same time, the Guard is very focused on making sure that they don't get left behind. And they have their own funding sources. And so that's what my group does. We upgrade airplanes. And so in your world, this would be TCTOs, these would be mod orders, these would be swapping out radios, radars, so sensor packages, anything that we can do to upgrade these airplanes so that when they go into harm's way, they are better able to survive, honestly. We do a lot of what we would consider to be survivability upgrades. Because it's a dangerous world out there when you're a fighter pilot. So in that vein, so the first thing I do have to say is that you really do need a bachelor's degree to come work for a place like GTRI. Let's just be honest. If you're going to come in to the university world, because we are part of Georgia Tech, you need to have that credential. But what I love about Stacy's comment is that credential or the work experience, that really is life. That's what education is about. It gives you a basket thing that you can put on your resume, while at the same time, folks that aren't necessarily going to school have this work experience. My challenge is that there are promotion paths that are academic that actually require that degree. And I am not going to bring in anybody into my organization who is going to struggle on those developmental paths. Okay. But it is really just a bachelor's degree. And of course, I'm going to start nagging you about moving on and getting the master's degree. But you know, that's part of the nagging that a good boss does. So the things that we really like technicians for is that Georgia Tech Research Institute does a lot of what we call applied research. We build prototypes. And we also do operational assessments. We do a lot of test and evaluation. And so when I'm running an experiment with airplanes, I need a core of folks that I can trust to actually do what the plan tells them to do, step by step. They actually understand the need to plan all of that, to follow the tech order, and be responsible for every single step in that. And so think of one of the big things nowadays is countering these UAVs. I mean, if you watch Ukraine, these small drones, it's frightening what they're doing with them. And so we are working to figure out ways to track them and bring them down. And a lot of our work isn't to build the crazy, zany approaches. We have tons of small businesses doing that. But I need technicians that will help me set up the tests so that we can evaluate and help the government figure out which are the best technologies. And you have to be able to defend that. And it's a rigorous thing. And you have to have people that really are going to go the extra mile and be out there on the flight line, setting up the equipment, paying attention to the collection of the data and things along those lines. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and it sounds like a pretty interesting and awesome job,
right,
to do. Yeah.
And then the other one that we really value technicians for is, so we're doing modifications, and so we install a new radio on the air warning and control, the AWACS planes, going through all of the tech data, making sure that it gets updated correctly, updating line drawings. And so there's a good bit of technical work that is actually better done by a technician because they'll do it right. the engineers coming out of college just don't have that level of rigor to they can barely read these schematics, let alone be able to change them and have it done correctly.
Yeah, so that'd be almost like another mentoring opportunities for young engineers is to work with seasoned
Lovely, yeah.
technicians. Yeah. Oh, that's
So
awesome.
I heard a avionics technician and paired him up with a young lady that had just graduated from Georgia Tech, and they're a fantastic team. They're doing great.
Oh, cool. Cool. Very good. Excellent. Thank you. So Lori, so tell us, this is for Lori, can you describe how your technical expertise helped you move into the job that you have now?
Oh, well, if I didn't have the background that I have, I couldn't be in this job. So I'm the vice president of tech ops. So I have all of tech ops under me. I have line maintenance, heavy maintenance, vendor, like outsourced maintenance. I have maintenance control, and then I have supply chain with technical purchasing, material planning, the AOG desk, and I have engineering as part of my organization, et cetera. So I have all of those. If I didn't have a technical background, I wouldn't be able to help my team be successful. I think the one thing that, because of my background, that I understand the handoffs that belong between these organizations. And so I think that that's a big part of my day, is trying to get supply chain to understand why maintenance needs what they need when they need it, how they need it, et cetera, and get engineering to jump in. And, so I think I spend a lot of time in my day making sure that all of the organizations support each other as they should. But if I didn't have the technical background, I wouldn't have the basis to understand what those relationships should be. And then I couldn't also hire the right people to lead those organizations. So I think that's another piece, is without the technical background, I wouldn't know what kind of leadership is needed in all the different departments that are part of my organization. So I think my technical background is bedrock to what I do. And just if I could jump in on the college question you had earlier, I think I stand between Ann and Stacy, because I didn't go to college straight out of high school. I had my A&P, got my A&P in high school, didn't even take the SAT because I was so sure I wanted to work and had no need for college. So I didn't even take the SAT. But I had wonderful people that mentored me and said, if you want to move up, you should get a college degree. And so it took me 6 years to get my college degree, because I started out with one class and said, because I was sure I wasn't going to do it. I ended up, being summa cum laude and a Ford Foundation fellow, and ended up getting my MBA as well. And so I think that I agree with Stacy that in the lower levels of management, you you don't need a college degree, but if you aspire to go higher, it is certainly a building block that has helped me. And more than that, and I have to say more than that, if it wasn't on my resume, I probably wouldn't have been interviewed for certain roles. So I think that the fact that I have an MBA opens doors for me that wouldn't have been opened if I didn't have it. And so I didn't start out that way, but the more I moved up in my leadership career, I realized that it was necessary both for how others view me, just to get my foot in the door, as well as some of the things that I learned. So I think that my technical background serves me well as my bedrock foundation to what I do. But I also think that my degree helped me as well to open doors for me. And it's really about how others view you, and I'll say this, I've said it a lot and I'll say it again. I found in my personal career, and, others may agree or disagree, but I always felt like I had to work harder, be smarter, do more, have more, just to be considered equal. So I think that when you don't have, like, I have an MBA, and I would be considered equal to people that don't have an MBA just because of the package I come in. So I think that's also part of being a woman. You have to be more qualified just to get where you want to go.
Yeah, I think that's the case in some instances. So those are great insights. I remember that when I started doing lean continuous improvement, when we started that over here in the hangars, the first time that they asked me to do a presentation, it was to talk about how we had cleaned up the hangar and we had put, ladders in specifically marked spots. And that's, the whole continuous improvement 5S process, which is essentially just getting organized. But I had to speak about what we did with the ladders, and it was to the executive vice president of tech ops at that time. I was so nervous. I think my eyes were like this big, and I was still a mechanic then. And I just said, you know, I don't know how to use PowerPoint, and I don't even know how to put together an email. So I think I should go back to school. And that was in 2008. So, but luckily, one tip that I don't know if a lot of people know, that if you do have your A&P and or experience, some of the colleges, specifically Embry-Riddle, where I got my degree, will give you lifetime credits. So I was able to finish my bachelor's degree in 2 years,
Yeah.
thanks to my experience and my Airframe and Powerplant licenses. So that was, I would say, a plus. So it's I think it's a good thing. Well, thank you so much. And Stacy, this question is for you. Can you tell us about some other staff careers besides leadership that you know of that would be interesting, or you know, a good career path for anyone that's interested in aviation?
Yeah, so the cool thing about an A&P certificate is it's the open door to everywhere. You know, you can leave your toolbox and go into maintenance control, where you're supporting technicians. They call in with a problem and you support them, whether it's applying an MEL or helping them work through a difficult problem that they may not understand. You can go into tech services and tech support, where you work more with more chronic, in-depth problems. You work with engineering for final solutions, help technicians go through EOs. You can go into education and training. One of the biggest gaps right now in aviation maintenance is the availability of educators for Part 147 schools. You know, we can't teach the next generation if we're not willing to become teachers ourselves. And you have to hold an A&P certificate to be a Part 147 school instructor. So that's a fascinating career path. You can work at a tech school, you can work at a university, you know, you have the opportunities to, you know, go be a part of Anne's World. There's, and that's more of like a 9 to 5, right? So if you get really tired of that shift work and everything else, you can explore teaching and educational opportunities. Obviously, you know, so many leadership opportunities, so many VPs, at so many airlines, and director of maintenance. You have to have an A&P up to the director of maintenance level. And, you know, a lot of them start in their toolbox. It really is a gateway to anywhere. You can go work in supply chain. And just like Lori was talking about, how part of her role is to make sure that the pieces and the parts understand one another. And why, as a technician, am I calling the AOG desk freaking out of, I need this part yesterday and you're telling me it's in Cleveland? Like, please get it to me, find a way, charter a plane. You know, and so you can move into those roles to help support the operation and get things done efficiently and effectively, with that genuine understanding of why. What is the why behind the urgency? What is the why behind the need, so that you can better fulfill that need? And so, I mean, there's so many different amazing careers that you can start as an A&P in your toolbox. And you know, in my role, I help facilitate an apprenticeship program. So I'm not an instructor, but I'm in management over this program. And if I didn't have that technical background, you know, how would I effectively administer a program to create technicians if I didn't know what it was like to be one and become one? So there's so much opportunity out there. You know, they call it a license to learn, but it's a license to learn for the rest of your life.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you. Yeah. And you know, and sometimes for some of those jobs, you don't necessarily need to have 10 years of wrench turning experience, or 3 years. I can tell you that my sister, she went to aviation high school. She got her A&P, and she was never really interested in being a mechanic, but she was really interested in knowing how airplanes work, and you know, what was an empennage and those kind of things. And having those licenses is what gave her the opportunity to start working as I think it was her first job was a maintenance planner, which was a great way to have a career in aviation. And now I think she actually works in global clearance, which is not necessarily related to air operations, but it's part of what is needed for the business side of the airline. So thank you so much. And we are down to 9 minutes, and I wanted to give the audience a chance to ask questions. So do we have any questions? And if you haven't put it in the chat, you can just turn on your mic and ask your questions to anyone here in the panel. Let me see if I got anything in the chat. Okay.
Doesn't look like we have any questions in the chat right now.
Okay, yeah, I just saw that. All right. Oh, yeah. We got a message from MC. She says, thank you, everyone. It was awesome to hear your experiences. So I think we've got some questions here. I see Mike is on and Fahim. Hello.
Hey, no questions for me, Seth. I just want to commend you guys for putting on a great, informative webinar. I mean, I learned a lot, and to a lot of points that we are in a learning environment, and when you learn a lot, you become better. So thank you guys for doing what you do. Keep doing it. I'm here to support.
Hi, Mike.
Hello, Lori. Long time no see.
Okay, here's a question from Etane Connor. How do we get younger women interested in becoming a AMP?
Outreach. Girls in Aviation Day is a wonderful way. You know, if you're in a position where you could host a Girl Scout troop to tour a maintenance hangar, AWAM has some hands-on projects that teaches girls to use tools to end up with a little bracelet made out of aircraft wiring, getting tools in kids' hands. You know, social media is a great way. It's a way that I would love to see utilized more. We have some great influencers out there that are in aviation, you know, AMPs, pilots, and stuff like that. You know, it takes hitting the ground running. It takes giving back to your own community. So go to your kids' elementary school, go to the local high school, be a part of career fairs, talk to guidance counselors. That is such a huge piece, is educating guidance counselors on what this career is and what it can do for you and the way it can change your life. You know, the way it changed Lori's life and your life and my life, you know, it really can. It's a path to the middle class. It's a way, you know, I could preach about this all day. I think every young girl should have a chance to hold a tool and squeeze a rivet and drill a hole and just have the opportunity to see what life can be like when you do something unexpected.
Yes, well, thank you. Those are extremely important points. Yes, and that's why I love doing career days. Fahim, you have a question? We can't hear you. Let me see.
Yeah, I'm just going to jump in while we wait.
Okay.
The other thing is don't give up. We're actually seeing that the current generation is hungry for the message that you have because they want stable, long-term jobs that they can get into quickly. What they don't want are student loans. And so you have an ability to onboard people into satisfying work with great development paths. And trust me, we're going to be doing maintenance on airplanes for a very long time. And so it's kind of one of these, it's been very difficult for the last 20 years to get that message out. And yet I think we're now coming back up the trough, and it's going to be a lot easier for folks to get that people interested. Fahim, did you get it figured out? No, oh no. Can you type it? Can you type the question? Okay.
Oh, sorry about that. All right, so anyone else? All right, we just got a couple of minutes left. So if you could do anything over again, what would you change and why? Anyway.
Wow, that's like such a life question. You know, I gotta tell you, I'm pretty happy in my life, so I'm not so sure I would change anything, truthfully. I mean, I'm kind of a happy person, so for
Yeah.
me, I'm good where I'm at.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah.
I would have worked to get the chip on my shoulder smaller sooner. I came into the industry definitely feeling as though I wasn't enough. And, Lori spoke earlier that you have to be, I like to say you have to be twice as good to get half the credit. And that's the unfortunate reality of things sometimes. But I carried that so heavily. I carried that weight so much for so long, just feeling like I wasn't enough, even when I was turning circles around the boys. And when I was finally able to let that go, the amount of peace that I got and the amount of satisfaction I got in my career, it went up exponentially. So, if you're carrying around that chip on your shoulder, take a chisel and whittle it down a little bit and you'll feel a lot better.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for, and it's funny because a lot of times, we hear a lot about those things nowadays about, the whole, self-acceptance and letting go and, you live a more fulfilled life, etc. But it is good to hear it again because it demonstrates that we're all human and that every once in a while we have those thoughts that, I guess they just sort of come around, but then it's good to recognize them to be able to just move on. I mean, for me, when I think about that question, I'm like, sometimes I do feel like I should have gotten earlier into like a staff type job, but at the same time, I think every day that I live just made me, and even currently today, just makes me the better person for tomorrow. And I enjoy the life that I have. I enjoy talking about my career. I enjoy mentoring, etc. I enjoy the job that I have, having a team, etc. So yeah, but anything from you, Ann?
Well, I'm similar to Stacy. There was this period in my career where I kept telling people, no, I don't want to do that. I want to teach. No, I don't want to do that. All I want to do is teach. And I turned aside a lot of folks that were trying to mentor me. I was difficult. It was hard. And I finally had a mentor who didn't listen to me, who kept circling back around, and he got me to finally get my head up and look at all of the opportunities that were out there for me and that I needed to stop saying no.
Oh,
That
excellent.
I could continue doing the great things that I had, but I had to be open. I had to listen to opportunities. And honestly, if he hadn't have been there, if he hadn't circled around multiple times dealing with this cranky, pig-headed professor, I would never have left the academy. I never would have sat in the Pentagon. I never would have done that crazy job out at the Rocket Lab, and I certainly wouldn't be here at Georgia Tech. So that chip on your shoulder, listening, being open to things that's probably my, I don't know. I'm like Lori, I'm pretty darn happy with where I'm at.
Yeah.
I'm just very thankful that I had that person who stepped in and helped me.
Yeah. Excellent. For me, that happened to me when I was, I want to say, I guess, 18 years old. And I still remember sitting in the steps by the hydraulic lab, and it was Lori. She said that
There
I
we
should
go.
go and get my A&P because I had put in all the work over the 4 years. So even if I didn't want to be a mechanic or wasn't sure what I wanted to do, I should go do the test and go do the practical. And thanks to that, here we are. So thank you.
I love it.
Well, everyone, thank you so much
I
for
made it.
attending this
Oh, thank you.
webinar. Let
Thank
me
you.
see. I think I hear somebody. Is that?
Yes, I made it. I made it. I had to do a
Oh,
little bit of
excellent. No,
mechanical repair myself. Drop one computer, launch another computer, connect the plugs, and I'm back here. So I really want to say thank you so much for the information you shared. I'm the regional coordinator for transportation logistics for Prince George's County. So my job is to discover opportunities in the aviation field, bring that knowledge to the job seekers, whether they're youth or mid-career. And so I love the information that you all shared because that really helped me understand the.
Oh, we lost you.
But if you kindly respond to them at your leisure, that would be very helpful. But I'm happy to stay on board for a few more minutes if you want to help answer some of these questions. For some reason, the chat is not. I'm gonna try again. I'll put it in there.
We lost our second half, but I think were you asking if you want us to you want to reach out to us to help you with some answers for some of the programs
Yeah.
that you're working?
That is
Okay.
correct.
Yeah. All right, well, we're out of time right now, but can you, I'll put my I'll send you my email, but then also all four of us are on LinkedIn. And you could look us up, send us a
Excellent.
message, and then we can coordinate something. And that's the same for anyone that wants to reach out to
Thank you.
any of these wonderful seasoned leaders that have been part of this panel, and to myself as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. All right.
So,
All right, I'll put these. Oh, wow. Okay, Fahim, I see your questions. Let me copy them so I don't lose them.
I
But
appreciate
all right, so we're out of time, and I will copy these real quick if I can. I don't know. I think I could get them from the technical people from Iowa. So
Thank
thank
you.
you so much, and everyone have a great day.
Mhm.